Welcome back into One Winning Pod, where we are going over a Ravens victory, road victory, Thursday Night Football. The very first time in Ravens franchise history this team has won a game on Thursday Night Football on the road in regulation. Remember, the only time previous to this was that game in Pittsburgh, but they won. That one was overtime, and quite honestly, they shouldn't have won that game. The Steelers' clock management at the end of the regulation was so bad that I remember turning that game off in just like depression, because the Ravens were 0-3 to start that year, and like I forget exactly what happened, but the Steelers had the ball with Mike Vick back there, and like the Ravens had no time. I had like one timeout left, maybe. I don't know. This as the history corner guy, I feel like I should have researched this before going on this tangent. But regardless, the Ravens had their first legitimate win on Thursday Night Football on the road in franchise history against a team with many good players that are not playing collectively well at the moment. But still, you know, this has them at 5-3, and I don't know. Snap judgments, man. I felt really good after this game. Maybe the best I felt after a win since the Chargers game last year. What about you guys?
2 games in a row, man. Finally got 2 wins. It's like we stopped flip-flopping. It felt pretty good overall. I mean, even in the fourth quarter, like technically they were within a touchdown of winning this game, but honestly, for most of the fourth quarter, like I felt pretty confident. Things were looking okay. We just needed a few plays to be able to close the game out, and we were able to get it.
Yes. The second half was way better than the first. I remember after the first half, I was pretty down in the dumps. But the second half, man, was a total eraser of all negative opinions. We said before the show started we wanted to talk about the offense first. Well, they only put up 3 points in the first half, which didn't feel great. But then they came out and scored 3 consecutive touchdowns and a field goal, and it felt much better. So that's the offense we've been looking for all year. It was just really clicking. And after the game, the question was asked, hey, why did you pass so much in the first half? You didn't run the ball. And apparently that was the plan. And a couple of players, recited the same, company line, so to speak. The plan was to pass the ball a lot, tire them out, and then run it down their throats in the second half. And genius plan, if true. I guess it was. I mean, unless they're all really good at lying.
I mean, in a way, they used the home field advantage against the Bucs. I mean, we saw last year the Ravens went down to Miami and had all that issue with the much warmer weather that's down there at this time of year than up here, the humidity. I mean, it's humid here, but it's even humider in Florida. So I don't know if that was what why they were doing that, or simply because they thought that was their best chance against this Bucs team. But yeah, in a way, they kind of flipped the script on what was the issue, or at least one of the big issues outside of the zero cover blitz against the Dolphins last year, in a way.
Yeah, for sure. First half, definitely a little bit frustrating. I don't even know if it was necessarily the run-pass split was frustrating, but it was just more of like the offense that we're kind of used to seeing sometimes when just things aren't working. It just runs aren't going for much, dropbacks either end up in a sack or an incompletion, or just not actually extending drives. Yeah, there's a lot that just like it was not really clicking in that first half. But and it also was a little unfortunate. It was a fourth down, kind of close in the red zone. Went for it, weren't able to complete that. I still argue I think Lamar could have been able to make it if he had a little bit of a better throw. I think he kind of threw it a little bit behind, forcing Robinson to kind of go up for it, and the defender was able to catch up. And then the missed field goal right before the half, which was blocked. So, it could have been, fortunately for the Ravens, obviously he came out with a win. We're not, we don't have to have a discussion of whether to go for it or not. But, I think, if you look at it that way too, like even if they had taken the points, it would have been 10-9 at the half. That's still pretty good. Obviously you like to see touchdowns, but yeah, I mean, I think we got to talk about the second half though, because we haven't seen. I can't even remember at this point the last time I've seen 3 second half touchdowns from the Ravens.
It was something else, just the way to sort of close out the game there, and they were playing so well with those touchdown drives that you had confidence the next time they got the ball that they were going to score more points. because nothing felt worse, I think, than the initial 3 drives where the Ravens were gifted the muffed punt. They gave them really great field position on what was otherwise a relatively stalled drive. But they had to settle for 3 because they were unable to, punch it in. The next drive, 3 and out, Boyle was blown up on a play where Gus got no gain, and then the next one was the absolutely brutal, 13 personnel, 4 verts play where Lamar gets sacked and we have to punt the ball. And we're just like, what are they doing? Like, this is just madness. That whole sequence netted in 3 points. And then maybe even the next drive, if you want to look into it, that's the one where the OPI on Prochet was called and kind of stalled out the drive. Mandrews got hurt, and Stanley, pulled for no good reason, and there was a sack of Lamar. So just like they were just not clicking for a while there, and it just made for a lot of concern.
It did. If we're looking at the microcosm of the offense, I think something that made it more bearable was, we'll get to the defense too, but outside of that first drive by the Bucs, the defense clamped down after that and was keeping them in check as well. And you saw, I understand that the Ravens offense started slow, and a lot of people on Twitter were melting down that we had to fire Roman, and it makes sense. In the moment we can get ahead of ourselves, but there was instances though that, particularly in the second quarter, where you could see some things starting to work for the Ravens, and maybe some things would be there later on. We're talking about that drive after the punt. If Lamar's throw was just a little faster and maybe a little to Andrews' left, to his right, he could have fit that in for a touchdown there. That play was very close to 6 right there. Just unfortunately, a great coverage there by the Bucs. And then, as at the end of the first half, the Ravens were unable to capitalize on points. There was the failed 4th down conversion, like you said, it was almost a touchdown, and then they got the ball into Tucker's range. 61 yards is Tucker's range, and then just unfortunately, a team finally figured out how to block that kick. As much as we love Tucker, just the physics of it is that when you're kicking from that far, there's a huge advantage there for the line to be able to block that with the trajectory that it physically has to happen there. Again, the first quarter, I agree, was outside of that play that almost got them a touchdown. Nothing was clicking, but I felt the momentum there at the end of the second, or the mid-second quarter, those last 2 drives. It really did seem like the Ravens were starting to piece things together, and that the Bucs were just, after the Ravens figured out, their Bucs are going to do this short passing game, and the Ravens defense, clamped down on that. The Bucs offense just wasn't showing a second punch, and so it just looked like Ravens, all they need to do is score a touchdown. This game is tied, and that might be it. And that's ended up what it ended up being. So yeah, I think you really got to give credit to the offense here. Obviously we want them to have fast starts, and fast starts are great, but what this offensive game plan to me felt like, and the execution for this game, was just like, steadily increasing the pace of a race, pacing yourself for the whole thing. And it took some patience on the offense's part, but once the thing got into full gear, it was running everyone over. So I understand the frustration, but I honestly have no problem with how the offense started this game, because I think that they were trying that slow churn, like we were saying, to be able to capitalize for the entire game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to mention a few difference makers that we can maybe kind of discuss a little bit. Maybe that'll take us into the second half offense, and we can kind of talk about what went well there. But number one, I think Gus Edwards, is really a key difference to this offense. And I think, this is why I think last year's Ravens struggled so much between having him and Dobbins both out. You can even throw Justice Hill in the mix, honestly, at this point. All 3 of those guys being out last year. There was that play, I think, the Ravens offense was backed up inside the 10. I think it was in the first half. And you kind of see Lamar and Gus kind of taking a minute to kind of get adjusted. And Lamar ends up passing the ball to Gus. He's dead to rights, basically, at that point. Somebody blew through the line and was going to tackle him for a loss inside the 5. He's able to shake off that tackle, spin around, and then instead of going left, he now goes right and ends up running for a plus 9 yards. Now it's 2nd and 1. A play like that, like last year at all, would never happen with any of the running backs that we had. And there are just like many plays like that, I think, in this game that really show of like, you know, the value that these guys bring to this offense is that you turn in like what is going to be a negative play into an immediate positive play. And just having more of those playmakers on the offense, I think, is it's really a godsend, right? We know Lamar can do it, but we need more of those players on this team. And Gus Edwards, I think, at least the running back position, I think is definitely one of those guys. You know, another guy I think for me who played really well and kind of continued into both parts. We hadn't seen too much from him this year, but Robinson, I thought was really, I think Lamar's kind of security blanket. He had a lot of clutch catches on the sideline. He was able to break away and get some yards after catch on a few of them, kind of running down the sideline. And I thought he did a really great job of just kind of being that guy for Lamar. And you're right, Peter. You know, even though the first half didn't kind of look pretty, there were a few key situations where both those guys kind of stepped up and were able to continue drives, and I think they kind of built on that a little bit with some of the adjustments in the second half as well.
Yeah, for sure, Peter. You're right. With the second quarter, the last 2 drives, we stalled out in the red zone, going for it on 4th down. Play was there. Lamar just didn't quite make the throw. And then the next one, we only had a minute. We went down and got into reasonable range with Tucker. Prochet had that beautiful catch over the middle that made me really excited. And then, like you said, Chris, if we go to them getting the ball in the third quarter after a 3 and out, which the defense just dominated, got the ball back to us. Boom. I love all these highlights I pulled out. Gus and Lamar were running well. Then you had that play where Ricard motions the Duvernay screen off the play action. So they could have handed the ball off in a counter. They had the pulling guard and tackle. They could have done that, but they decided to pull it, throw the ball to Duvernay. He goes upfield. Just like, I loved that play. And then similarly, they did another RPO where they strike Duvernay. And it was just like, those were the play calls where I was like, yes, where was that all the whole first half? Like that just like looks so good. And like the play calls are so good. It was just everything you wanted to see out of the offense in one drive.
Yeah, the numbers for the second half here are incredible for this Ravens offense. First drive out of the locker room for the Ravens, 77 yards, a touchdown. After that, 80 yards, touchdown. 83 yards, touchdown. 49 yards, field goal. Then Lamar's kneeling down. That is perfect. There's nothing better that they could have done there. It's incredible that it's taken this long in the season for the offense to have. Well, I guess we should step back. I guess the first half in Miami was that as well. Just that one, obviously, the offense came too quick, I guess we're going to say. They at least didn't have that same consistency in the second half, to say the least. But, yeah, I agree with you guys. The play calling was a lot more interesting, a lot more effective in the second quarter. Was that part of the Ravens' plan as well? I don't know. We're also, if we want to take this plan at face value. And then another part of what happened in this game, we've already alluded to it, was next man up. You go into this game, and we already knew Dobbins was out, and then as the game progressed, the Ravens lost Andrews, and then gradually after that, Bateman, and then in the second half, Gus went down. But like you guys already pointed out, we saw huge contributions from Demarcus Robinson, James Prochet, Kenyon Drake had another good game after disappearing a bit against Cleveland. Isaiah Likely, I don't know if we've talked about him yet, but of course we're going to get to him. If you guys follow us on Twitter, you saw that we did a little digging and found out that Likely's game, huge game, significant for him in the fact that he tied the Ravens franchise record for number of receptions in a game for a rookie tight end, and he was 6 yards shy of Mark Andrews' record for most receiving yards in a game. We put up a little quiz on the Twitter. Shout out to at Northern Flock for guessing correctly that Mark Andrews was the guy who has the Ravens single game record for receiving yards in a game. And then also shout out to at Jake Zav, I believe, for guessing correctly that Max Williams, of all people, has the Ravens single game record for rookie tight end with receptions. Now shares that with Isaiah Likely, 6 catches for 77 yards. All these guys stepped up and had better games than we were expecting them to have coming into this. Their best games of the season, really. And for that all to click on a short week, just excellent to see that. We as Ravens fans, of course, we're homers. We believe 100% in our depth, and then the reality of the season kind of shows you that it's good, but maybe not quite as good as we think it is. But I mean, on Thursday night's game, the depth was everything that we talked it up to be in the off season, and we'll see if that continues. Yeah,
the footwork from Likely to be able to get his feet down the back of the end zone on that touchdown, I think was really great. Showed off a little bit of his ability to break tackles in the open field and get some yards after catch. Although, there were, I will say there were some other instances, I think, that, the safety was kind of playing kind of tight to him, and he wasn't able to kind of break as many tackles as we would have liked to kind of see. Particularly, I'm thinking like the preseason where it seemed like nobody could tackle him. But yeah, he had a great game. Very good to kind of see him in that role. We're hoping Andrews will be okay, though. We got the extended break, kind of like the mini bye, and then we'll see kind of where his health is. But then after that, we've got the other buys. So, I'm not too worried about him long term yet. Hopefully he'll be able to come back and everything will be good. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of talking a little bit more about second half adjustments. I do feel like we should give Greg Roman a lot of credit in, overall a lot of the adjustments, and just, like you kind of mentioned it earlier around some of the play calling just seemed a little bit more, a little bit more simplified, a little bit more kind of relying on like, just easy options for Lamar to take, right? And stuff that's complementary, right? You mentioned a few of the plays of, kind of using some misdirection, like, okay, make them think that the play is going to go this way, or they can, have an option to go that way, but then they have another option, which is kind of across the field that opens up if they want to take that. I think there are a lot of those plays in the second half that really like jump-started things, made things a little bit easier. We didn't have to rely on just Lamar standing back in the pocket, waiting for somebody to get open 20, 30 yards downfield. I'll say one thing that was the Ravens were struggling with in the first half that they kind of got cleaned up a little bit more in the second half was pass protection. I think in general was a little shaky. At least kind of how I was rewatching, it seemed like most of the guys on the line, I think, were kind of having trouble in various periods. Stanley, I think, let up one sack. He kind of let his guy kind of go around him on the left and then sort of, I don't know, maybe assumed that Lamar had kind of gotten the ball out, but he didn't, and then was kind of slow to kind of react to push the guy back, and he ended up sacking Lamar. But now Moses struggled a little bit on the right. Linderbaum, I think, struggled a little bit. Vea is a massive man, and I think he had a little bit of trouble with him. Powers as well. For me, I think Zeitler was the only one that I couldn't really see any like obvious negative plays during this game. But that being said, some of the adjustments, like I was talking about earlier, I thought, they did a good job of kind of having Zeitler kind of take up the defensive tackle. He just had a much, better success rate, I think, at getting those blocks and pass protection. And they kind of used Linderbaum either as kind of looking for help next to Powers or somewhere else, kind of use that speed a little bit, being able to do some other things to kind of put him in better positions to be able to, make those pass protections. I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, just, adjusting the play calls and trying to make things a little bit more easy, try to get the reads out a little bit quicker, adjusting your blocking schemes. I thought all of that was really on full display in the second half, and it worked out really well.
Yeah, one thing we saw when watching the the game is that they finally decompressed the center of the field. They were using options on the outside, throwing outside numbers, and that Duvernay play was an example. A couple passes to Marcus Robinson were outside the numbers, and I think that just like using the whole field is a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? It really helps open up running lanes too. I think that's part of the reason the running game was more successful, is that we were just not focusing so much right in the middle of the field. I thought the one thing too, like it'd be remiss not to say, is in the run blocking, holy cow, did Linderbaum have a great game. The clips are going around of him going upfield and just, putting a guy on skis for 10, 15 yards. But I thought that what was interesting is also they just went to a more zone running scheme, a little bit more zone than we had seen previously compared to the normal gap scheme and power scheme that we normally see. And I think, we also saw some amazing pulls, or Stanley in space just like dominating. He sprung off the run for Drake. I think with those two guys healthy and on the team, more zone calls will make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was really cool. That I think there were a couple plays back to back, and I think in the third quarter where you kind of saw it was like, man blocking, man blocking of like just kind of back to back. Of it's really cool to kind of see, just the keeping the defense on their toes and kind of switching things up like that. I do think the zone plays too were pretty successful. I think the first one that I remember seeing, I think was like an 8 or 9 yard run from Gus. It was something that, hopefully our backs kind of have success with and continue to have success with. I think it may have surprised the Bucs a little bit to kind of see that come out a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I think it does make a lot of sense. We're talking about, that was one of the reasons I think that we didn't want to give Linderbaum, was that we didn't feel that he fit our scheme, but now it's more of Roman like, okay, well, now we have the players to be able to do stuff like this. Like, why don't we throw it in a little bit, I think it's a good idea. I think a lot of people have been calling for it for, this offseason. So, yeah, it was good to see that it was kind of brought out. I can't say it's a vault play because, we've done it before, but but it was cool to kind of have it brought out this game and have some relative success right away.
Yeah, we'll have to see if this is a trend that the Ravens are going to do, that they're going to incorporate this more often going forward, or was this just matchup specific? But regardless of what it ends up being, I think we have to be excited with just looking at this as a halftime adjustment and how well it worked for the Ravens. Early in the season, that was a bit of a frustration among the fan base, is, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, defensive as well. This team, the coaching staff, not making enough adjustments second half. And I mean, we can debate whether or not that was really the case, but in this instance of this game, I mean, that, like we're saying, they came out in the second half and it's a completely different game plan, completely different way of attacking the defense, and it obviously paid huge dividends, as we've already said. And then the only other thing I want to make sure we add in when we're talking about the blocking, of course, everything we're saying about the offensive line, and I'm in complete agreement, but I think we also got to highlight the blocking of the tight ends too. Isaiah Likely had some key blocks in this game. And we've talked all in the preseason, like how raw his blocking looked, for lack of a better term. He shored that up a little bit. That looked good. And Pat Ricard in this game, yes, obviously he had the hold. Everyone saw the hold. Lamar called it out before the refs did. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he had a lot of great downfield blocks in this game, both as the H-back, and then several times the Ravens had him lined up in line blocking as a tight end on rushing downs and some passing downs as well. So, I mean, all around, the run blocking in this game was one of the best we've seen this year, and it paid dividends on the final scoreboard. I mean, time of possession this game, Ravens just dominated this. Almost 39 minutes of clock that the Ravens have the football for this game. 7 more first downs than Tampa Bay. Outgained them by over 100 yards of total offense. Just a dominant performance, and there's just so many. It wasn't down to one player, as I think we're kind of making obvious as we're going through here. It was just a complete team effort by this offense and the coaching staff, and you love to see that. You love to see that, especially on a short week and especially on a team that is still not able to fully get past the injury bug at this time in the season yet.
I think one other shout out I want to give, he didn't have many carries, but Justice Hill, he has that extra bit of explosiveness whenever he touches the ball. He averaged 7 yards per carry on his 4 attempts, and just like, I just feel like whenever he gets the ball, it's a little bit more dynamic than any other options we have at the moment. So I'm glad that he wasn't completely in the doghouse after the fumble last week. He also had a couple key blocks. And all I meant to say, likely one of the best blockers that we've seen this year from the tight end position. Apparently PFF graded him very highly. And he even made a shout out to it during his presser. Like, I think Harbaugh going to like my run blocking. And that's some growth. That's some serious growth from him, because we remember in the preseason that was a liability. So if he's able to demonstrate that more and more, he's going to find himself on the field with or without Andrews' availability, because that was really, I think, what was holding him back from being a truly dynamic option for this offense. Was he just looked like a wide receiver. But if he's able to put those blocks in space like he did, I mean, that dramatically changes the way that teams will approach him.
You know what's incredible? We've gotten through this whole discussion with the offense. Have we even mentioned Lamar Jackson's name once?
I mean, we did. We said they had some good runs with Gus. But yeah, and he threw outside the numbers a couple times. But yeah, no, you're right, dude. We've done this before. We can take Lamar for granted.
I mean, I guess we can. And if we really look at it, it was a good game. It was an excellent game from him. 2 touchdowns, no picks, 238 yards through the air, 43 yards on the ground, including a 25-yarder to start out the second half, which really was a tone setter. It was a tone setter, not just from him, but from the blocking. That was the play. You've probably seen it by now. If you haven't yet, go back and watch that run by Lamar. Tyler Linderbaum just basically picks up the defender and just bulldozes him back 15 yards. It's beautiful, beautiful to see. But, I mean, yeah, if really, it's incredible that the Ravens had such an excellent offensive game, and Lamar was just he was pedestrian Lamar. You know, outside of that run, none of his plays were super highlight worthy, at least compared to what we're usually used to seeing from him. His numbers, like we're saying, are good, but they're not eye-popping. They're not like, you don't look at that and you think MVP. That's not really an MVP performance. But that's the thing. That's part of what's great about a team win is your best player can have a great game and be a huge reason for why the team won, but just everything else was clicking around him, and he didn't have to be the MVP. He just had to be one of the guys just getting stuff done. So I think that we still got to commend Lamar, though, for going out there and for seemingly not getting overwhelmed by the fact that the Ravens had a poor offensive start, and then coming out there in the second half and leading the team to the gauntlet that they were able to put up in the second half.
Yeah, for sure. I think, my initial kind of reaction, with Lamar is, again, kind of just the story of the offense, right? It's just the first half did not really look very good. There were a lot of throws that I think he probably wanted to have back, or he wanted to be able to, put them in the right place. Just a few kind of behind, few low, just kind of inaccurate. But yeah, second half, he came out, he looked a lot better, looked like a little bit closer to the Lamar that we want to see every Sunday. I do think this game is a good building block for him, because I think the last couple of weeks he has looked pretty rough, frankly. I think even I think last week the Cleveland game I think was probably one of his statistically worst games of the season, and it's been that way for a few weeks. So I think we're still kind of waiting for him to go back to the Lamar, or getting close to the Lamar of the first 3 or 4 weeks. But that being said, it was not a bad game from him. It was definitely good, especially if you weigh the whole game, including the second half, a little bit more fairly. I do I agree with you. I think it was good, but he's got room to improve, just like the rest of this offense. And the good thing is we're finally starting to see, hey, they can score in the second half. All right, let's do it again against the Saints next week. And then after the bye, okay, we'll see what we can adjust, and we'll keep getting better. That's the thing that I really like the most about this team is that, I feel like they've definitely learned from 2019 that, you can't peak too early. You definitely have a lot of growth over the whole season, and you have to be able to make sure that you can put it together near the tail end of the season and into the playoffs. Because if they peak too early, then, they're going to fall flat in the most important moments. So I really hope that they kind of take that to heart and, just continue to get better.
As good as the offense's second half performance was, it would have been a lot harder for them if not for the fact that despite giving up a touchdown to the Buccaneers on the first drive that they were defending that offense, after that point, the defense really clamped down. They made adjustments after it was obvious what the Bucs were going to do. We're going to try and do a lot of short passing game, a lot of screens, take some shots down the field, but only after it was really set up by the run. And again, I mean, watching the game myself, like obviously it was a slow start, but the fact that the defense just kept the Ravens in the game just really gave you hope that, once again, if the offense just figures something out, then this could actually end up being an easy win for the team. And there's plenty of reasons why the Ravens were able to do this, plenty of guys that we can look at and highlight for their performances. But I think to start with, to look at what the defense was able to do, second week in a row that the pass rush looked really good. Didn't get as many sacks as last week, only 3 this time, but there were a lot of times where I felt like there was the pass rush was collapsing the pocket really well and getting into Brady's face. And again, like we said, Brady gets the ball out quick. I'm pretty sure they said on the broadcast that this year he's getting it out at the quickest point in his career, so that's going to make it hard to get sacks in that situation, like we've talked about before. But I think in this game, we saw yet again the pass rush. It's improving from week to week, and it was a big part of this defensive effort on Thursday night.
For sure, a lot of really good play on the defensive line, and we didn't even have Calais Campbell this game. He sat out from his injury, or I
think he was sick, wasn't he?
No, I'm sorry. He sat out from an illness. Yeah. I gotta say, Matt Abuke for me is continuing to really show off on tape of just being disruptive and really generating a lot of pressure. Another guy on the defensive line who had, maybe not as much of an impact on pass rush, but definitely had an impact this game. I think Broderick Washington had 3 pass deflections this game, which is incredible. But yeah, I mean, those guys, I thought looked great. And I think credit to Mike McDonald, man. I think he's continuing to find success in a lot of the, blitz packages that he's sending. One guy who I feel like is really kind of being that Swiss Army knife a little bit. Alec, you'll probably be happy to hear this, but like Hamilton, man, I think he's been really successful kind of being that sort of blitzing safety, sort of like dime back. Whenever you kind of see him close to the line, it's like, he's either going to be coming on a blitz or he can drop back. And he's got the speed to be able to drop back quickly if he needs to on some of those things. And I think a lot of the sacks that you kind of see are from these like little overload blitzes that McDonald's calling and, just kind of like overloading one side of the line. I think if I recall, I think Hamilton was in that one of the 2 sacks at least that Houston ended up with. Was kind of on a play like that. So I'm excited, man. I think there's a lot of good, I think, that are still left to come on this, but defense continues to really improve in that department. Yeah.
I am happy to see Hamilton playing better, man. I'll admit it. Apparently, thanks to Ken McCusick, I guess, for some of the stats, he broke it down and said he played 28 snaps of dime, like you said, and he had some really effective plays there where he broke up pass plays. He was good at rushing the passer. And yeah, he's starting to seem like he's getting more and more a role. But you know what, man? I got to give props to Geno Stone, too. He's looking really, really good in his role, too, and making it so that no one's screaming for more time for Hamilton, as the starting safety, for, of course, Marcus Williams being out. Stone's playing great, too. I mean, we really are blessed to have these safeties available and playing at a high level. And I think it really allows the defense to do a lot of good things.
Yeah, the play of all the safeties was excellent this game, including Chuck Clark, who, like Lamar, just kind of had a standard middle-of-the-road Chuck Clark game. Just, we've seen so much before from him doing it. But, yeah, Stone, gosh, what was that play early in the first quarter? There was a play, I believe it was on third down, where Stone did that delayed pickup of Godwin that fooled Brady into thinking that Godwin had more room than he did, and then Stone just sprinted all out at Godwin and broke up that pass. That was just a very smart play, excellent play to see there from Stone and Hamilton. I kind of feel like we got from this game the first real preview of what we're going to be able to see from this guy in the National Football League. He made several plays, nothing super highlight worthy, but I think one play that I really like seeing was in the second half. There was a play where Brady was trying to get Cade Otton, rookie tight end for the Bucs, on a route in the corner of the end zone, and the Bengals tried a very similar concept Sunday Night Football with Hayden Hurst, and that play Hamilton was called for a penalty on that one. And now, of course, Otton himself is a rookie as well. He's also trying to learn to adjust his game to the NFL, just like Hamilton is, but Hamilton was able to deflect the pass that Brady was intending to Otton, and it was good to see him perform better in that situation than the first time that he had been presented with that in his career. You expect to see that growth from someone who was drafted as high as he was, but still, that doesn't make it any less good when it happens. Yeah, I mean, it was also helped by the fact that the Bucs' deep passing game across the middle just wasn't there. They were able to hit a couple plays on the sideline. You got to give credit to Brady there. It was a little frustrating for Pepe. He gave up a post to Evans where that was in triple coverage, but really Williams was the primary defender, it looked like, on that play, and Brady was still able to loft it in there. And of course Humphrey had that tough play where Evans is able to get it deep. But yeah, I mean, I still don't think that takes away from anything that the safeties did. They had a great game. Could have had a couple picks. Unfortunately, there was a couple bobbles there, a couple drops, but overall, excellent game from that position group this game.
Yeah, man, there were so many dropped, so many drop balls. I mean, Humphrey had one early, he dropped. Peters had one in the end zone. I think it was a throw to Godwin. He dropped. Yeah, it's funny when you mentioned Chuck Clark. I was like, well, he dropped the one in the end zone. I mean, fortunately, they were pass deflections. Like, none of them actually, the plays in question, none of them were actually like touchdowns. Like, they were just pass deflections. But yeah, I mean, certainly with a defense that was having so much success with turnovers the first couple of weeks with Marcus Williams, it's like, come on, guys. Like, he's going to be out a couple more weeks. We could use a few more of those, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, yeah, I think it kind of goes to what you were saying earlier, Peter. It really didn't seem like it mattered all that much. Like, I mean, Brady was taking his shots occasionally, but there's just a lot of, I don't know, their offense really kind of feels out of sync to me. They had some success with things, like you mentioned. There were a few blown coverages, and there was that pass interference call on Stevens that kind of got them down there. But the defense was just playing really well and covering everything, and just not really letting the Bucs have a whole lot of success. So yeah, I think overall it just continued to look a lot better. I think the only other like interesting thing here, I guess, that we haven't really talked about is we saw a little bit more inside linebacker play, not from Queen and Harrison this week, which is a little interesting. I guess the number one thing is that it wasn't too much of a liability. I'll preface it with that. I know, like, in the past, certainly we and everybody else on Ravens Twitter has complained a lot about Queen and Harrison and other players at various points in the season or previous seasons. But I mean, on Thursday we had some significant snaps from AJ Klein. We had some from Welch, and I thought they looked okay. Welch, I think, still is kind of needs to find his way a little bit more in pass protection. I think he just like has some trouble kind of getting back into his zones. Klein, I think, was picked on a little bit in the beginning, but ended up, I think, playing pretty well. Had a couple of tackles in the game. Can kind of fit well as that kind of backup Mike. But I don't know. I mean, did you guys see anything in particular from those guys that we should talk about?
I just saw more of them than I thought I would. I was a little surprised that Malik Harrison didn't play more snaps than he normally did or normally does. I guess it was a little bit more, but not by much, with Bynes being out of the game. And we didn't see too much of a pickup from, Kennard and Klein to kind of pick up that slack. I think the big difference was just that the Ravens were able to get a decent lead, to score a lead, and that allowed them to play those dime snaps and get more linebackers off the field, which kind of helped, I guess, cover up any of those liabilities. Although Queen and Harrison have just been playing way, way better this last couple of weeks. It seems like in their third year, they're really starting to put it together.
Yeah, I agree. There were some instances early in the first quarter where the Bucs did pick on the interior linebacker coverage a bit. They were able to get some big offensive plays, particularly with Godwin in that instance. As the game went on, though, like everything else, the Ravens defense was able to adjust and take that away. I will admit that I didn't look terribly much at that position group from an individual standpoint. But yeah, again, from a team standpoint, that definitely the play there increased as the game went on, for sure. But yeah, I think it was interesting. I do wonder. I mean, obviously, Josh Bynes was out for the game. I don't know if that played into anything. If anything, I mean, I guess we would have expected to see more of Harrison in that situation. So it was definitely interesting. But yeah, we'll have to see once Bynes comes back from injury. Is that going to continue? So yeah, definitely something interesting to keep an eye on going forward for this team.
I think you bring up a good point, Peter. In the very beginning of the game, the Ravens were playing a lot of zone, and we've seen the zone be pretty effective this year. But Tom Brady is really good at picking apart zones, and that's what he did. He found all those soft spots that will just naturally exist. Even if you're playing it well, there will be soft spots, and the approach was not effective. So we saw the second possession, they shifted more to a man look when they got closer to the end zone, and it clamped down, and they were able to stop them from getting another score and just getting a field goal. And then after that, you saw a lot more man, and that's really what led to a much more suffocating defense. So I'm glad to say that they were able to adjust. I'm a little surprised they did zone in the first place, but kudos to the coaching staff for realizing that, making adjustments. And I will say, I think that's what we've really been seeing out of McDonald this year, is his ability to adjust has been pretty good. Outside of a couple collapses, his adjustments have been spot on.
Anything else to talk about with the defense or MVPs?
I guess it's not really defense, but a special teams play. I want to make sure we definitely highlight that heads-up play by Justice Hill. He was able to, gun really effectively and then slightly push, the other player into the punt returner, causing the fumble. We were able to land on it and get some points out of that flip field position. So I thought that was a really great play, heads up, and just adds to the value that Hill provides. It's not just his explosive running ability, but he's a really good special teamer. We've seen it time and time again. Now I think I'm ready for MVPs.
Yeah, definitely. Hill and Duvernay are definitely all team hustle this year. Both those guys have just been playing in every snap they're out there. They're given 100%, which isn't to say that others aren't, but just with those guys, it's extremely evident that they're just giving their all, and we're continuing to see dividends from both those guys. Both of them are having career years, and nothing huge from Duvernay on the special teams front this game, but it's still been great to see him break those when he has the opportunity. I'm sure we're going to see him do more of that going forward. And we're bringing up Duvernay's name. We got to again recognize another guy we glossed over, stepped up and had some big plays down the stretch as well in that next man up offense in the second half.
All right, I'll kick it off with the MVPs. I feel obligated to take on Isaiah Likely, my darling. I love this man, and he had a great game, and he was building up. I was saying in my notes, nice first down by Isaiah Likely, nice pass catch by Isaiah Likely. Likely's having a good game. Look at that toe tap, he kept getting more and more notes, and it was his coming out party in the regular season for sure. So kudos to him, kudos to his blocking, and I hope that this is a key piece of the offensive transformation we see in the second half.
Nice, yeah. You took the obvious one right out of the bat, but I like it. I'm gonna give Cole MVP. I'm gonna give Cole MVP this game. We talked about going into this game. We were really frustrated that Marcus Williams is going to miss. Safety play is huge when you're playing Tom Brady. We know how much of a pain Ed Reed was for Tom Brady throughout the years. I mean, Brady's admitted it himself as much. So again, who was had to step up in this game? Geno Stone and Kyle Hamilton. They both did. They had great games, as we talked about in the recap. So I'm going to give the MVP to both those guys, filling in very nicely for the injured Marcus Williams.
Nice. I'll wrap up. I'll give mine. I mentioned his name earlier, but Kevin Zeitler, I thought had a really great game. Like I said, I just kind of watching the offensive line a bunch this game. The Ravens struggled a little bit early. The Bucs pass rush is pretty good, but one guy who didn't seem to have much trouble this game, Zeitler. And I really thought that he allowed some of the other players to kind of do what they do best, which is why you end up with a highlight of Tyler Linderbaum on Devin White. Is that's one of the things he does do best, is like actually get out in space and block at the second level. So Zeitler continue to be just like honestly the best offensive lineman on the squad right now. So good job, man.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back later, I guess next week. This episode will come out probably on Sunday. Be back and recording our preview of the Saints game later in the week and doing our NFL picks. So definitely make sure to check that out on the YouTube channel as those come out. And you can follow us on Twitter, where you can find other fun historical things that Peter can dig up and other content at OneWinningPod. And you can always email us, onewinningpod@gmail.com. Go Ravens. Awesome to get back-to-back wins. Starting to feel it in the air, guys. The Ravens are for real.